In this video, I'm going to go over the State of the Game dev blog as well as the dev update that was posted to Revit yesterday. These each have a bit of overlapping information, but some of it's different, so I wanted to go through each one. The closed beta recently ended, and they're just kind of giving their thoughts on things going forward. They brought up the turret, and they acknowledged that it wasn't really used a whole lot in the beta. Um, They're exploring making the turret stronger against ground and the heavy turret stronger against air, which I think is an interesting idea. If they do that, I kind of hope they change the names to make them a little bit more descriptive than just like a heavy and non-heavy one, um, to reflect that change. But yeah, I think that's interesting. Another thing they're considering is basically forcing you to have an anti-ground unit and an anti-air unit in Tier 1. So basically locking one of them to the red only units, which is the anti-ground units, and then one anti-air unit. Um, so what you could do during the beta was you could pick um, two anti-ground units, and the example they give here is like one melee and one range. So you might do like scorpions and gunbots or something like that, and it could be like a pretty strong tier 1 choice. Um, and they didn't want games to play out too much in tier 1 where it's just very, very, very micro heavy. They generally thought it was more fun if you ended up getting into that tier 2, tier 3 units. So I don't really have a strong opinion one way or the other. I think it'd be fine if they made that change. So we'll kind of see how that shakes out. And then they're also exploring making some tier 2 units that would cost red only in the future. So that could be pretty interesting. Currently, it's only those tier 1 anti-ground units that cost red, and then a very small handful of choices in tier 3 that only cost red. So that'll be cool to see in tier 2. Um, they're trying to make unit counters easier to understand, so I really like this image that they put out there. Basically, splash beats small, small beats anti-big, anti-big beats big, and big beats splash. I think that's pretty intuitive, but I think seeing this and having these labels on the units inside the game will definitely help players newer to RTS or newer to Battle Aces kind of understand that system in general. There's definitely a whole lot more nuance to this than meets the eye. They're saying big, of course. Um, like a bigger unit in size is generally going to be better against splash because the way that splash unit is balanced, its damage is balanced to be, hitting multiple targets when it's attacking small things. So it's just not going to get that value when it's attacking big things where it doesn't really hit any additional units around it. Um, but of course, there's within the big category, there's the durable units because not every large unit was a durable unit, um, which is a keyword they used during the beta. And when you had a durable unit, you had the destroyer that killed it. So there's kind of some subcategories to these um, that players will still have to learn. I'm assuming they're going to maintain that durable um, keyword. That'll be separate from big. Because that did work really well, I think, in the beta, where there were like the few durable units were, um, I think really their purpose was really to be that anti-mortar unit, because the mortars could obviously be very oppressive with how much range they have and being just a really powerful siege unit, kind of like the siege tank from StarCraft. Um, just having that option for the durable unit and the damage reduction that they updated. Basically, the mortar does. I don't know how much the reduction was, but the mortar does reduce damage against durable units during the beta. So, and then you've got the destroyer as like the anti-big that can kill the um, the durable units. So, but anyway, but on the whole, this will be very helpful to just getting a grasp on the game and kind of like a starting framework for understanding how units interact with each other. So they want to improve focus fire mode. So in the beta by default, focus fire was off, and you actually had to go into the menus to turn it on. Because the mistake you could make is if you accidentally right click or attack click like a unit in the back line, and not all units can shoot at it, then they're just going to try to walk towards it, and then if they're running into uh, your opponent's units, um, then they're just kind of idling, not doing anything, and then dying, and you can lose a whole fight if you do that for just even a second or two. You can lose entire volleys of fire that you would have been doing otherwise and lose the battle. So what they're going to do instead is if you choose to target fire something that's far away, the units that are close enough and have it in range will take those shots. If other units can't quite get to that position, they'll essentially give up and just shoot the things that are around them for the most part. So yeah, so that's kind of an interesting idea to make things a little bit easier on newer players. Sticky focus fire was really interesting too. So this is basically if you're kiting with some units, you can target fire a unit, and then you can start stutter stepping back where you move, attack, move, move, attack, move, move, attack, move. You don't have to re-click that unit. Your units will actually remember the last thing they were shooting at, and as long as that's still in range, the next time you do an attack move, they'll reacquire that target and shoot at that target again. And then you can, if you want them to forget it and just shoot whatever, you could hit the S key to stop. And of course, if that unit's not in range, they will just take a shot at something else instead. So definitely find that pretty interesting. That'll make kiting a little bit more effective as you take down maybe some key units while you're doing it. So that's very interesting. So that was the Reddit post, and then yeah, like I said, there's a little bit of repeat information on the blog post on the website. But I want to go through this as well. Yeah, they want to thank everyone for playing in the closed beta. They had some comments about the alpha uh, in the past, and then they're talking about unit changes going forward. They'll be fine-tuning things. As an example, the King Crab, my favorite unit, actually does need some nerfs, so it's kind of a bummer. But in the middle of the beta, they actually did increase the movement speed, so that was interesting. And then they wanted to nerf the health to kind of keep moving it towards this role of like a faster unit that can do a bit of harass to differentiate it a bit more from the roles that the Crusader or Mammoth would have. So yeah, I think when they posted about the movement speed increase, yeah, I like the direction that they were going. And then as far as what to nerf on the King Crab, if they were to nerf any aspect of it, nerfing the health does seem to make the most sense. So I think that's sensible. And of course, the King Crab was very strong, so I think it's okay that it's getting nerfed. Um, I do have some replays I'll be posting a little later um, that kind of show the King Crab versus Stinger, and I've got it from like both perspectives. It's like my King Crabs versus an opponent's Stingers, and the vice versa, my opponent's King Crabs versus my Stingers. And technically, you can kite the King Crab with your Stingers, but in practice, for someone just kind of okay like me, it's really really hard. Um, and it's a huge burden because of how much health the king crab has, because you have to kite over and over and over again. You have to stutter step like a lot to get those shots in and stay out of range of the king crab. And the fact that the king crab actually does have a little bit of range, like we talked about in another video, the king crab can actually reach over the top of scorpions, which makes that a good combination. Because the scorpions can run in and the king crabs can still hit with their melee damage by just reaching over top. That range makes the kiting even harder too, because you might be kiting and maybe you think you're far enough away, but sure enough, the king crab can reach out and poke, right? Um, yeah, so on the whole, I think that could be a good change. Um, and then yeah, they talked about the turrets again here. They give kind of the reasoning for making sure that the turrets were undertuned during the beta because they just really didn't want things to turn into stalemates where maybe both players got turrets and just hold up and no one's attacking each other. So they want to avoid that. Of course, they're going to want to avoid that in the future. But yeah, making each turret good against air or ground, I think, is a good way to do it. And then yeah, if you set up one type of turret, there will be a counter to it, whether you approach them from the ground or the air. You just take on their weakness, basically. Um, yeah, what else? 2v2 they talked about a bit here. I skip over that for now. I didn't play too much 2v2 in the beta yet. Unit tool tips. So this is going back into those descriptors and what counters what. So they'll put that in the game so that you can kind of see what each unit is and what they do. And they give a couple examples which are really helpful here. So like the shocker unit, for example, is ground, attacks ground. It is a splash unit. And then as a reminder, a splash unit is going to be good against small units and bad against big units, basically. And they give a couple other examples in here. So I think that's great. I think that'll definitely help out. And they mentioned that the stat pips didn't do them any favors. So that's like the 1 of 5 that they had on the website. I also found that pretty confusing myself. You know, because the units have different costs, and so it's like, well, do the pips mean based on per unit, or is it like based on per cost of the unit? They're just kind of these vague approximations. Um, and if I really needed to get a better understanding, I was often just looking up the unit statistics, you know, on some third-party website or whatever that had like their health and damage, fire rate, DPS, all that stuff. Um, so yeah, what I really hope they do is I hope they do just give us all the stats. That's what I'm really hoping for. Just give us the health, give us the damage, fire rate. Just put all that somewhere. I mean, maybe not like right up front, but like somewhere you can click to review all that information in game. I think would be super helpful to understanding that. So yeah, that's my feedback on that. But otherwise, the stuff that they're planning on with these labels is great. And yeah, ranking system, they liked how that worked, so they'll I guess they're just for the most part keeping that as is for now, so that seems okay. Um, let's see, new player experience. What else did they say about this? Um, yeah, just trying to smooth that out for people. Um, oh, ground anti-air targeting. So this is pretty similar to like the focus firing thing from the Reddit post. Um, so ground anti-air units do prioritize shooting air units, and then at least in the beta, when the units would fall out of range, sometimes the anti-air units would just try to chase them, and it was almost to a fault. And I heard other streamers and other pros complaining about this a little bit too. Um, that yeah, they really just seem to do that to a fault and then just like die to a ground army. So they're looking to change that a little bit. If air units get out of range, then and there's other ground units that are immediate threats, your anti-air unit will basically just start fighting what's in front of them instead. So I think that'll be a good change because I experienced that as well myself. Automated control groups. This is something they talked about in the middle of the beta. They were maybe going to include it during the beta, but held off. But here they're saying that this will be a thing. So they're going to have an option where you can have everything you make automatically assigned to control group one. And an important distinction about Battle Aces versus like StarCraft Remastered in terms of how control groups work is that a unit can only ever be set to a single control group in Battle Aces. So if you take the example they give is like taking a smaller group of units to make as like a harassment group and making them control group two. When you do that, they're actually removed from control group one. So that's different from StarCraft Remastered, where if you did that in StarCraft Remastered, sure they'd be control group two, but they would still be a part of control group one unless you reassigned control group one. And I think that behavior is good. I think that's actually really helpful. Um, and um, and yeah, that example is kind of why this automated thing is handy because you know you can separate that group, send control group two off somewhere, and then any new units that you make are still part of control group one. And so that's still a bit different from the select all button, which would include your harassment group, which you may not want. So I think this is really a really cool option to include. I'm not sure if I'm going to use it personally too much. With the king crab style I was doing during the beta, I would very, very often split my entire army into two big chunks and for flanks and things like that. And depending on where I was on the map, and depending on where my opponent was on the map, and what fights were going on, and like if I lost units from one group or the other, um, the units that I make, sometimes I'd add them to control group one, sometimes I'd add them to two, and it just depended on so many factors. Um, so yeah, I think what it'll come down to is that it'll be, for me at least, it'll be a feature that I might use, but it might be deck dependent. If I have more of like a slow moving army that I just really want to keep as one big group and push with, then this might be a little bit more useful in that case. So yeah, I just wanted to go over that really quick. That's pretty much all I had to share on that. Just wanted to put my thoughts out there and see what people thought. And I'll catch you guys in the next one. Bye.